everyone, this is Shannon here, and I'm so excited to be joining you at Simon Says Stamp, sharing with you this fun interactive card that uses some new products from Hero Art's summer release. To start today's project, I went ahead and trimmed down a white piece of cardstock to create these 3 panels that measure 3 by 4 1/8. Now this is the new Rectangle Peekaboo Doors Infinity dies. These dies are so awesome. They make adding an interactive element to your card super easy. They basically just die cut a door, and that allows you to kind of put something special on the other side. So I think it's just a really fun and easy way. So I took the largest die from that set and just traced around it on one of the panels, and now I'm going to stamp the first layer for the VINEYARD HEROSCAPE stamp set. This is an awesome layering stamp set that creates a beautiful kind of winery scene. For this first layer, I'm going to ink it up with Fog Reactive Ink and then just stamp this first panel. I'll now remove this first panel out of my MISTI, put that aside, and then grab another panel, one of the 3 that I cut, and then I'm going to clean this stamp, and then I'll ink it up with a new color. This is Key Lime Fizz Reactive Ink. And after I've inked it up, I'll stamp my second panel with the first layer from the VINEYARD stamp set. So now I have 2 panels stamped, one in Fog and one in the Key Lime Fizz. So I'm now going to grab the second layer from the VINEYARD stamp set, position it here, pick it up with my MISTI, and now I'm going to ink it up and stamp my first panel. So I grabbed kind of a gray again, this is wet cement, inked it up and then stamped it. And as you can see, it already starts to add a lot of details and start to really create that vineyard scene. So I'm now going to clean the stamp, ink it up, and then I'll stamp my second panel. And this time I used another green. This is Moss, and then stamped it. And you can see all the details. Just so cool. It's already starting to develop. So this is the third layer for this stamp set. So I positioned it, picked it up with my MISTI, and now I'm going to ink it up in a really dark gray, almost black, and then stamp this layer. So as you can see, this first panel is basically, I'm stamping it kind of like black and white, kind of like a black and white photo, and the second panel is the one where it's getting all the color and kind of real, true to life kind of colors. So here I am inking this up, this third layer in Pine, and then stamping it. I'm now going to grab a brown ink and do one of my favorite inking techniques, which is partial inking. I'm going to hold the ink pad at an angle so just a part of it hits the stamp, and just inking up the bottom portion of the stamp, and this creates a nice little gradation, adds a little bit more depth to the image. I'm now going to grab the 4th layer to this vineyard scene. This is the grapes. I'm actually not going to stamp the grapes on the gray layer, I'm just going to leave it as is, but on this colorful layer I'm going to stamp them. I first inked the grapes up in THISTLE and then stamped it, and then I've grabbed mulled wine, and again I'm going to partial ink these, so I'm holding the ink pad at an angle, so just the top of the ink pad is touching the tops of the grapes, and once I get those grapes kind of inked up, I'll then stamp them a second time, and again this will create kind of a gradation on those grapes, kind of make them two-tone. I think it just adds a nice little look, nice little detail to it. So now I'm going to create some really quick masks. I have the second and third layer for the VINEYARD stamp set here in my MISTI. I'm just going to stamp on a piece of scrap grid paper, and now that I've stamped them, I'm going to fussy cut them out. I just cut along the top edge of these 2 layers. This right here is the 3rd layer. I'm now going to position it, line it up onto the panel here. This is the gray panel. And once I get it in place, I'll grab a little piece of purple tape, place that down, and then I'm going to grab a tiny house, and this is also from the VINEYARD set, position it here so the bottom of it is slightly on the mask, and then I'll ink it up and stamp it. And by doing that, by kind of positioning that house a little bit over the mask, it's going to incorporate that house a little bit better into the scenery, so it looks like some of the shrubs and the bushes kind of grew up around the house. And I just inked it up in charcoal and stamped it twice. So now I'm going to do the same exact thing to my colorful panel. Again, I'm going to line up my mask here. Once I get it lined up with the corresponding image stamped on my scenery, then I will grab the piece of purple tape, hold it down, and then I'll ink up the house, this time in that Cup of Joe, that dark brown, and stamp it a couple times just to make it nice and bold and solid. So now that my little house is stamped, I have both of my little scenes all stamped out. Now all I have to do is ink blend the sky. So this is the other mask that I created. This is actually the second layer. So I'm just lining it up with the top of the hills, and once I get it in place, I'll then start to ink blend my sky. That mask will obviously just protect those hills so I don't get any of the sky color on it. And I'm using fog again here, just going to ink blend a little gradation so it's a little darker at the top and a little lighter, and that'll just create the look that there's some color in the sky. Now I'm going to add some color to my colorful panel. I'm going to position the mask, and then I'll start with this yellow here. This is Lemon Drop, and then I'll move on to Fruit Punch. And once I finish that, I'll ink blend with my purple. This is Grape Slush, and just ink blend. So I have a nice little gradation and a nice bold color, kind of creating the look of a sunset. I'm now going to move on to some additional images. I'm going to grab this barrel here from the Vineyard stamp set, pick it up, and then I'm going to ink it up with caramel. So I'll just ink it up and then stamp it here. After I've stamped it in caramel, I'm going to do some partial inking and ink the bottom up with Cup of Joe and stamp it, and that'll create just a little gradation, add kind of a shadow. This is the wine bottle, going to ink that up in Pine and then stamp it. And as you can see here, some of these images have some kind of white areas, and we're going to actually color those in too. Now I'm going to finish up with my final image. This is a little wine glass. I'm going to use a soft pool and then stamp that. So I have my 3 extra images that I'm going to add to my scene. Now, like I said, I'm going to color in these little white spots. This is just going to, or these little white negative spots, going to add some more depth to the image. I started with the brown for the barrel. Now I have a couple golden yellows that I'm coloring in the metal around the barrel as well as the label on the wine bottle. Then a green for the glare on the wine bottle. And then for the wine glass, I'm just going to grab like a purple and a dark red to kind of create the look of wine in the actual glass. So I went ahead and die cut these images out with the frame cuts, the matching frame cuts. And now I'm kind of ready to kind of bring this together and kind of create our window or our door. So I have the rectangle peekaboo doors dies again, and I'm going to grab the largest die, and one side of the die actually doesn't cut, it creates a score line. So I want to make sure I get that score line on the left side of my scene, and I'm going to line this up on my gray panel, and once I get it in position, I'll grab a couple pieces of purple tape and then run it through my die cutting machine. I kind of lined it up so it looks like it is a Polaroid or a photo. So now that I've actually run it through my die cutting machine, I'm going to cut right along the score line. So I just have this rectangle of my scene. That will actually go on the front of my door when I'm done. Now I'm going to grab my white panel, my third panel that I didn't stamp on, and I'm going to use the remaining frame from the gray panel to help me center my door. So I cut it in the exact same spot, and then I used a piece of purple tape to hold it in place and then ran it through my die cutting machine. And you can see here's how it's all going to stack up together. I'm going to now stamp my sentiment since I'm almost ready to kind of put this together. I'm going to stamp a sentiment from the Layering Mountains at the Lake stamp set. This is actually a sentiment that has 2 parts, but I cut off the bottom part. You could definitely mask if you don't want to cut your stamp. And so the first part of my sentiment will say, or it does say, "It's your birthday." Now on our second panel here, our colorful panel, we're going to have the second part of our sentiment, and I'm going to grab a sentiment from the Vineyard stamp set, and this sentiment says, "Enjoy your special day." So I've inked it up and stamped this panel as well. And I used INTENS-ified Black Ink for both of those sentiments. Now that my sentiments are stamped, I'm going to do a kind of cut an additional door here. This is a trick that I learned from Jennifer McGuire. This is just going to add a little bit of strength. So I used the largest die from the Rectangles Peekaboo door set to just cut another door. It also has kind of a hinge for where that score line is, and I'm just going to adhere that to the back side of my white panel here that I die cut also with the Rectangle Peekaboo doors die. Now that those two are adhered together, I'm going to adhere my gray panel right to the front, and this will fit perfectly on the door because again we used the doors die to cut that panel and then just cut the score line off, or cut along the score line with an X-Acto knife. And now lastly, I'll add some glue just to the outer edge, just to the frame. and then adhere this stacked kind of door right on top of our colorful panel. And everything should be lined up perfectly because we stamped everything in the MISTI on the same size panels. Our house is basically in the exact same spot on both scenes, so it's going to be really kind of a congruent so you know that both these scenes are the same. It's just one is colorful, one is in black and white. Now for the colorful scene, I'm going to add all those images that I colored and stamped and die cut. I just add some liquid glue to them and stick them right into the colorful scene. And that will basically complete kind of this interactive door element. All I have left to do is adhere it onto my card base. I have an A2 top folding card base made from sand cardstock. I'm just going to add some liquid glue to the back side of our photo kind of interactive element and stick it down, and that completes the card. And now hold the card up to the camera so you can get a good look at all the details. Even in our gray scene, it's very rich and has lots of depth thanks to that Vineyard HEROSCAPE set. And then when you open the door, you see this really bold, vibrant scene. And I think it works really well with the sentiments. Kind of the first scene is it's your birthday, and then you open it up to have this lively image that says celebrate your special day or enjoy your special day. I think it works well to kind of say, don't let your birthday pass by, enjoy it, celebrate it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I use, please head over to Simon Says. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.